Drawing box rotations is hard, or not. Actually, no, it's not that hard. It's pretty easy if you know the right method to learn it. And today, I'm going to tell you about the best exercise to learn box rotations, going into the details on how to calculate proportions and convergence, and also give you some assignments so that you can get the most out of it. Let's go. Let's set up our scene. Let's pretend we're looking down at a box. That's a square box, an actual cube. And our scene looks something like this. So we have our camera, that's our eye, basically our point of view, that's pointing directly at it. What we see down here is something like this. It's basically the box. Now, if we turn on our x-rays, we're gonna have the back side as well. And you might be wondering, how big should the back side be? I noticed that 50% of the size of the original box is fine. This is an approximation, but about half the size of the front works. This obviously changes depending on the lens of the camera you're looking through. So whether it's telephoto, a normal-ish lens, or a wide lens, it's gonna impact the size of the back side as well as the convergence of these angles. Well, not on this one, but on the others certainly would. I honestly just use arbitrary ratios like this because I learned it this way and it looks correct enough. So the back one stays at 0.5, and what I want to do is basically orbit around this whole thing. So let me move it down a little bit. So I'm going to take my camera, and I'm not doing this. So these boxes are not going to be part of the exact same perspective with the same vanishing points. They are going to change, but we don't worry about that. Just know that what happens is basically this. So we choose our angles, we use 0, we use 90, we use 45, and then we divide this in 2 again, we get 22.5, and then we divide this in 2 again here, and we get 67.5. This is 0, this is 90 degrees, obviously. This is 45 degrees. This is 22.5 degrees, and this is 67.5 degrees. And they're all looking towards this box. So to make it easier, we're gonna start with the 45. But before that, we actually need some unit of measurement. So we cannot do this without having some sort of ratio we can refer to. Because we have 4 different angles here, we're not going to count that. We're going to divide this in 4. So half, and then again half, and I'm going to do the exact same here. And having this, we can now start informing our decisions because everything is going to fall within these measurements. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it roughly here where I'm going to draw my 45. For the 45-degree angle, we're looking straight at this corner. Because of that, the corner is going to be in the middle. And the size of this is going to be roughly the same as the height of that one, just a bit bigger because technically we got closer, or it got closer to us. The distance, again, or the width is going to be, again, a little more than the width of the original box for the same reason, because we see the diagonal. And these sides are going to converge with the ratio that's going to be determined by the size of these. A good rule of thumb is to make them about 0.7 to 0.8, so let's say 0.75, that's 3/4 of the size of the original. So I'm going to do something like this. Again, this is eyeballed, but it's fairly close. Just notice that both sides need to be the same size. They need to be exactly the same. It's basically mirrored here. Now that we have this, we can inform this and this. So I'm going to copy paste my measurement unit here. And I'm going to use the 1/4 mark. So this is going to be a ratio of 1 on one side and 3 on the other. I'm going to drop the line. It's still going to be vertical. We're not going to move anything in terms of vanishing points for the vertical side. And then the small side is going to converge way more than the other because this side is now closer to this than it is closer to the front. So it's going to be somewhere in between. It's probably a little too small. Somewhere in between this and this. I found that a good ratio is around 0.6 compared to the original So something like that should work. And this, I'm not even gonna bother measuring it. It's basically just shy of horizontal and a bit wider than the original is. Also, we drew this so to inform this one, because this angle is always gonna be flatter than that, and that small one is always gonna be more skewed than the one on the other side. So I'm also gonna draw through. And to do this one, well, it's basically the same as this, but the other side, so I'm not gonna bother measuring, just comparing the angles all the time. So make it a little flatter than that, make this a little bigger than this, so this is bigger than this, flatter, this is smaller than 1.1 we use here, gonna be a little longer like that, and then this is gonna converge way more, something like that. This convergence and this convergence, or let's say this convergence and this convergence, need to be the same again. So this segment here is always in the middle if we're looking straight at it from the same height. So something like that. Now for the other side, I basically have to do the exact same thing, but rotate in the other direction. So instead of bothering you and boring you, I'm just gonna take this and duplicate it and then put it here, because it's exactly the same thing. Not only that, but I'm also gonna notice if there is any inconsistency in anything that's wonky. This one looks a little bit wonky, but they're pretty much good over here. And now comes the tricky part, because so far we only rotated the box in one direction, but now we're actually gonna do it on both axes at the same time. So I wanna draw my 9 degrees now, because I am going to use it. So I'm gonna take this, basically a square, I'm gonna rotate it 45 degrees, and looks like it's a little bit off. Let's clean it up, something like that. I'm going to use this to inform the rotation along this axis here. Notice that, again, we are rotating using both axes now. And to do this, I'm going to draw the back face that's roughly half of the size of the original box, or the original face in the front, something like that. And I will imagine that this goes downwards. Obviously, as it goes downwards, it gets a little closer to us, so I'm going to account for that. And when I draw the top face, I'm going to have to draw it slightly more open than 9 degrees. Why? Because if this is 90 degrees, anything that we look more at an angle towards is going to be more open. So we're going to have, actually, let's use it. If this is, let's see, this is 9 degrees, I'm going to do something a little more open like that. I'm going to make sure it's centered. I find the center here and I make it like a little less on the other side, because we have to converge towards a vanishing point. So something like this is probably correct. And finish up this box as well. Oh, this is a coincidence, actually. It was not supposed to be there, but okay, something like this works well. Then again, I'm going up a notch. So remember, when we do this, this is always 1, 2, roughly 1 quarter of the big. So this is 3 and this is 1. Remember, this is always 3, 1, 2, 2, 1, 3. And this is obviously just 1 because we're 4, because it's the whole box. So I'm gonna go higher up. Don't worry if you go like I did here. I made it a little bigger, so technically you can resize it to make it proper, but it's fine at the very beginning if you get it wrong, or if you're recording. So I'm gonna open up the top a little more, making sure I converge the angles towards the center, because we are rotating around the middle of the box, so the vertical vanishing point is always in the middle. Something like that. And then I do the 1 to 3 ratio. And this is basically done. Now, this is a little wonky, but it's fine. We're going to see why in a minute. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Now it's time to work on the others. And I will basically apply the same principle that I use for these. So I'm going to draw this. like so. And notice again, the vanishing point is in the middle of the box. Do not do this, okay? We're not doing that. So there you go. It didn't really take me that long, honestly, which is also why this exercise is so awesome and useful. Because first, it's fairly quick. Secondly, it includes auto feedback because you probably noticed when I rotated those, but if I rotate a canvas, I can immediately see if any of these are off. It looks like this one, it's the one that I usually screw up a little bit, so I probably have to fix that as soon as possible. But it's also useful because you're not drawing as many boxes. In fact, the only boxes you're drawing are these. Because everything else is a duplicate of what's there already. Like this is a duplicate of this. This is basically this rotated. And this is just a box. This is the same as this. So you see, it's not as many boxes. It's pretty fast. Also, if you choose a numbering system for this, let's say A, B, C, D, and 1, 2, 3, 4. We can probably ignore this row because we don't need it. We can actually mark these when they're wonky. Let's say this is wonky, this is wonky, this was kind of hard. And then I'm going to write down which ones, like B3, C4, and D4. And I'm going to practice these only. Obviously, it's going to be much easier because I know the ratio. So this needs to be what? 3 to 1. And again, 3 to 1. This needs to be what? 2 to 2 and 3 to 1. And this is 2, 2 and 1, 3. So when you know that, you can just go ahead and only practice those to make the most out of your drawing time. If you keep track of the ones you screw up, you're gonna get better in no time. So you can use this one as a first warm-up, see which ones you screw up, and then only go ahead and practice those for a couple minutes. But if you do have a lot of trouble with this, I actually put a template in the video description that you can download for free and use to get started. You basically just have to follow the dots and everything else should fall into place. Something like this. And I promise you, getting good at this is really not that hard. It's probably not going to take you more than, I don't know, something like a week if you do it every day with diligence. But let me know in the comments down below if you try this exercise and you encounter any trouble, because I am going to make another video about this topic. And speaking of video, do not just watch this video without doing anything. Actually, please do try the exercise because it's fundamental to learn how to rotate things in 3D space and get a hang of that spatial awareness that's so important for drawing. But if you're up for more spatial awareness, I actually got you covered because I've got one video here that talks exactly about that. As always, good luck and take care.